Well, I told him that he had that Seattle thing, and he didn't know what I meant by that. So I referred him to some guitar players that I knew of who were from Seattle that had left a mark on the R&B fabric of particularly the late 70s and 80s and early 90s. One such person was a guy named Horace Blackman, and I heard about him because apparently he was the rhythm guitar to Jimi Hendrix's lead guitar when these guys were growing up in Seattle. And of course, Jimmy went in the direction that he went in. Bernard started playing early on with Bill Withers, later with LTD, and there's a tune called, give me just a minute here, you guys will probably remember before I will. I always get it mixed up with this Frankie Beverly tune, Back in Stride Again. So, Back in Love Again, that's what I'm thinking about. But it has this repetitive guitar riff in it that's very distinctive. And I can't sing any specific rhythms or guitar voicings. You just know it when you hear it. And it is so prominent in the fabric of R&B. All of the post-70s R&B guitarists have copied this style and listened to it. So you would need to go back specifically and listen to the Bill Withers recording, Still Bill, to really hear the guitar riffs and hear the voices and stuff prominently. But when I first heard Josh, I heard that element in his playing. And so I asked him, I said, have you ever heard of Horace Blackman? And he hadn't. But just from growing up, where he's been growing up and playing around that scene, he's been able to access it and find it. So, for you guys or for anybody that's watching this, if you go to those records and you hear those recordings, man, and then you listen to him play, it's right there, man, lock, stock, and barrel.
For Josh's style, do you think it's a combination of the Steve Croppers and Jimi Hendrix? What would you break that down when you hear him play? The tone quality and the... Because to us, he's a singer. Like, he's the only guitar player we could ever rap over. He's the only one that could sing with us, and he has his own voice, a songwriter.
Well, it's you know, and from what I understand about it, and I never met Horace Blackman, but from what I understand about it, it comes out of what was referred to as old R&B, which has its roots in jump swing, you know, Louis Jordan's music, early, you know, what was called early rock and roll, and that point where rock and roll and instrumental jazz that's designed for dancing and R&B were all one music. So you have people in that mix like Chuck Berry, like Buddy Holly, like Fats Domino, people like Ray Charles. And all these people are people who were players and they did, you know, dance music. So you're talking about dance music that you really had to have not that you don't now, but the level of chops of the players that played that music was really no different from their peers who were playing straight ahead jazz or something like that. There's a point where all of that music is one music. So I think in his case, in Josh's case, it's probably trickled down to some other things that because he's listened to a lot of music, man. So it's come to him via reggae, it's come to him via Bob Marley, because those guys in the islands were listening to American music, you know, listening to people like Johnny Nash and who was a really good guitar player, and the studio musicians that played with him. And what a lot of my colleagues in jazz studies don't tell young jazz musicians is that people like Fat Ed Newman and people like John Coltrane in the daytime played a lot of sessions in New York. They played a lot of R&B sessions, you know, and it's nice to want to have this ivory tower where you worship these jazz musicians for the great records that they made, and they were great records. But to make ends meet, during the same time they were making those landmark classic records, they were jobbing. And during the whole time Train was with Miles, man, he was playing, you know, bar walking gigs in Philly with organ trios, honking and howling, you know, playing R&B and rock and roll tenor. And when you listen to him play on tenor and play Love Supreme and Alabama and all that, the way he comes up from the bottom of the horn, and you hear those guttural sounds, and you know this, what the historians say, singing from the soul of the music. Where the hell do they think that comes from, man? Learning to play like that, from, you know, being on the bar doing this, man, honking and growling.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not belittling him at all, man. I think John Coltrane, I think Sonny Rollins, I think all those guys are great players. But there's a part of the tradition that some people would like to cut off and say, this has nothing to do with this. So this is what we're going to recognize as being valid. and all the precursors from that are not valid. That's bullshit, man.